Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to yet another virtual meeting of the Heritage Oakville Advisory Committee. And I just thank all the staff again for the work that they do to put all this thing together for us and to work it through. We have members of the public looking in, and if anybody is watching the live stream and you don't actually have a copy of the agenda so that you can follow along what we're doing, you can get that at oakville.ca under Town Hall Agenda and Minutes, and then you can read the same stuff that we're reading. As you know, all delegations are required to register by noon the previous day, so we have in fact 5 registered delegations to assist us as we deal with the items on the agenda today. Delegates are reminded that they have 10 minutes during which they can make a presentation on an item under the agenda. The committee members, as you know, you're muted during the presentations, and if you wish to speak, you should let me know by waving your hand or putting up a board or something with writing on it, as Brenda has discovered works effectively. And then I'll note you down and I'll ask you to speak at the proper time. Then you would mute yourself again after you've done that. I would remind everybody that we are an advisory committee and that our recommendations from today's meeting will go to the Planning and Development Council for its meeting on November the 1st. November the 1st, isn't the year running out quickly? At 6:30 p.m. And I'd remind any members of the public watching or any others that if you wish to delegate at that meeting, you must do so by letting the town clerk know at least by noon the previous day. Nice to see Kerry here with us today. I guess it's a good news, bad news situation, but I really have to say that I respect you and the other elected members who are here today, that, you know, people who put the name forward and climb onto the hustings, that takes a lot, and it really is to be commended, and I thank you for doing that. You would have been good. So anyway, we'll move right along into the agenda, and I would ask if there are any regrets, Madam Secretary.
Mr. Chairman, regrets are received from Daniela Hampton Davies.
Okay, thank you. Duly noted. We otherwise have a quorum, of course. So are there any declarations of pecuniary interest with respect to any of the matters coming before us today? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the next item, which is the confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting, which have been distributed. Are there any comments on these minutes? Would somebody like to give me a motion to approve? Councillor Gittings, thank you. So Councillor Gittings has moved that the minutes be adopted as circulated. Anyone opposed to that motion? Seeing none, the minutes are approved. So the first discussion item on our agenda this morning, 4.1, is 64 First Street. And I think that's Carolyn. Good morning, Carolyn.
Good morning,
I'll leave that to you. So off you go. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. We'll just wait for the presentation to pull up for this. So this is our first item, and it's a heritage permit application. So here's the property at 64 First Street. You're probably all pretty familiar with it. There has been some pre-consultation meetings on these properties in order to discuss possible severance in the future. That's not what we're looking at today. Today, we're looking at alterations to the existing house and garage on this property just at 64 First Street. Go to the next slide, please. So the property is located in the 1st and 2nd Street district on the west side of First Street near the corner of Union Street. Next slide, please. Again, it's designated as part of the district, and it contains a circa 1950s house. It is considered to be a non-contributing property within the district, and so this means that owners can apply for demolition of any of the buildings on the property. None of the existing structures are considered to be of heritage value. So the proposal is to remove the existing garage, the detached garage, which is out in front of the house, and to keep the existing house, but to construct 2 new rear additions. I should say new rear additions, and construct a new attached garage as well. And finally, there are some minor alterations proposed to the existing house. Next slide. Just take you through some photos of the property. So this is the view of the house and garage from the street. So the garage on the left-hand side is proposed to be removed. Next slide. Another view of the property. Next. This is closer up to the house. So again, you can see it's a 1.5-story house with a little 1-story addition to the side. Those are proposed to be retained, but some alterations made to them. Next. This is looking at the south side of the house. Next. And looking at the rear. So this view shows where the additions are to be added. They're all to be constructed around this rear and side portion of the house. Next. So here's a site plan showing what they're proposing. As you can see in the site plan, they are actually showing the edge of a new house on the right-hand side on the adjacent property. This is part of the larger proposal that the owners would like to do in terms of severing the property to allow for an additional lot between this property and the current adjacent property at 52 First Street. This is, again, not part of the application today, but because this is something the owners would like to do in the future, all of the alterations that they're proposing today must meet, or they would like to meet, the requirements of zoning for the future if this severance goes through. So as you can see, the dotted line, it's a bit difficult to see, but the lot line to the right side of this house and the proposed additions, that's not the current lot line, that's the proposed lot line for the future. So the proposed additions are all being proposed within the new lot lines that, again, have not yet been approved, but they would like to propose for the future. So we can also see the existing garage further to the top of the property has been removed because that would be straddling the new lot line. So that building is proposed to be completely removed, and a new 1-story attached garage is proposed to the right of the house on the site plan. So that's the gray shaded area. And that would also link into another rear addition at the back and a newer other separate addition on the the bottom left-hand side of the existing house. I'll take you through the elevation plans now. Next slide, please. So this is the front of the house. Again, everything on the right in the middle is all existing, and the left side is the 1-story proposed attached garage. You can also see some minor changes to the existing house at the front. Currently, there is no porch. There's just a stoop, and they're proposing a covered porch running the front of the house. And they're also proposing to replace the 2 existing dormers into one larger dormer in the front to provide more headspace within the house. And finally, on the right-hand side, the 1-story portion, on the lower story, there actually is an existing bay window. They're proposing to replace it with a door to allow for an entrance there. And the new addition, any of the new additions that are being added would be covered clad in horizontal wood siding to match the existing house. Next slide, please. This is looking from the rear. So on the left-hand side, that 1-story portion you can see with a large set of windows, that's the 1-story wing that they're proposing to add. And then there is in the middle a 2-story wing they're proposing to add, which then attached to the 1-story attached garage, which you can see on your right-hand side. So again, everything's to be clad in horizontal wood siding to match the existing house. The heights of the addition are the same as the existing height of the 1.5-story house, or lower at 1-story. Next. And this is showing from the south. So again, this is you're looking in, the first thing you see is the attached garage, and then the additions behind there. The existing house is shown in white there. It is actually clad in horizontal wood siding, and that's not proposed to be changed, but it's just to differentiate and show you which is existing and which portions are to be added. Next slide, please. And this is a view from the north. So again, the white portions are the existing house, and the ones with siding are the new additions. Next slide, please. So in reviewing this proposal, there are no heritage attributes proposed to be removed. Of course, the property is considered to be non-contributing, so they could actually replace the entire house, but they are proposing to retain it and to add additions. These new additions have traditional design and materials in keeping with the existing house. The heights are the same or lower than the existing, and the setbacks are all considered to be appropriate for the house and property as well. And again, no variances are required, either for the existing lot or for what could be the new lot once the severances are approved. So again, they are proposing it as if the severances have gone through, but of course, that's still a process we have to go through in the future with the Heritage Committee and with Council and the Committee of Adjustment. Next slide, please. So the staff recommendation is for approval of the heritage permit, subject to final details on the cladding, windows, and doors being submitted to heritage planning staff for final approval. And I do believe we have the owner here as well. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them as well.
Okay, thank you, Carolyn. Thank you. Right, well, it's always good right at the head end to know why the application is here. That's usually the first question we ask anybody. Why are we here? And so you've explained very clearly why it is we're here. So have you any questions of Carolyn from members of the committee? Nope, no questions, no questions. That was a good presentation. Now we do have, I think, a delegation. Is it Mr. McGlynn? Do you wish to speak, Mr. McGlynn? I see your sound is off. Can you hear me? He disappeared. Mr. McGlynn?
Yeah, I'm here.
I've got your sound.
Yeah, I apologize. I'm no pro at this, so I.
Right, and we don't need your picture, so you could.
No, there I am.
Well, there you are. We can see your picture now too. That's good. So we've got both. So
Yeah.
You've heard the presentation so far. What would you like to add to tell the committee?
Really nothing. Carolyn kind of covered it. I think it's a relatively straightforward. There's been quite an evolution of 64 First Street from using the 100 by 150 lot and building a 6,000 square foot home to the proposed. We had a pre-con on the severance, which would have been another new home on 64 First Street to where we are now. So it's pretty straightforward. I think Carolyn pretty much covered it. It doesn't, no variances. We will provide all the details on the finishes, aluminum clad windows, clapboard siding, pretty much what you see here. And it seems to meet all the setbacks and everything. So everything seems to be in order.
Okay, good. Are there any questions of Mr. McGlynn? No. Okay, Mr. McGlynn, you can mute yourself again, but you can stay in to hear the rest of the discussion. Okay, so you've had the presentation and the opportunity to ask questions. We're now confined to the board. Any discussion? Jerry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to say that at a microscopic level and how it's been analyzed and presented, I see no issue with the details and the pragmatic approach to it. But I have to say that I have a particular concern with this application from a macroscopic level. Although the particular permit and the particular comment is that it is a non-contributing home in the heritage streetscape. I think the character and experience of the street, the experience of solid and void, the vistas, all will change by the demolition of the garage and densifying of the streetscape, and the historic streetscape context will be lost. The unique character of an off-grid garage, a vista of rolling landscapes will all be lost. And I just wanted to state my comment on that one and my difficulty with this application. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I hear you, Jerry. I always hear you. But at the same time, there are certain rules. There's a new district plan and it says this house is non-contributing, therefore it can be demolished. And the question of the severance, that's a whole other issue that we can't deal with, and that will be dealt with through its own process. at a later date. But I hear you. It is change. It is change. Any other comments or discussion? Okay, well, we have a staff recommendation before us that the application be approved with the usual final details left to staff, and that the permit expire 2 years from. Is somebody ready to give me a motion? Thank you, Councillor Gittings. So we have a motion on the table to approve the staff recommendation. Are there any opposed to that motion? Seeing only one, the motion is carried. Thank you very much. So we move on to the next item, which is item 4.2, and it's the rehabilitation of the Bailey Estate Farm Manager's House, which is a lovely story. So I hope that Carolyn is ready, because she's on again, to tell us all about what's happening here.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll wait for the presentation. Here we are. So a lovely view of the farm manager's cottage or farm manager's house at the former Bailey Estate. As you can see it in the 1920s on the right-hand side, and as you see it today, not much has changed with this building. It's been really well, protected and retained over the years. And so we're trying to make sure that those heritage features are retained for the future, and that the building has a good use for its future. So we'll go to the next slide, please. So just to give you some background in terms of where it's located, you can see in the location map the gray square in the middle of the map there. So the original Bailey Estate went from the creek that you kind of see going running north-south through that property over towards the right, towards the West Lynn Road. So that was around the area of the estate between Lakeshore Road and the Lakeshore. And this is one of the last remnants of that estate. Most of it was demolished in the 1940s and 50s and 60s as subdivisions were created. And there's more information on that in the Heritage Impact Assessment that was attached and included in your agenda. So the only two remnants are this farm manager's cottage, as well as two of the stone pillars for the estate, which have been relocated to the entrance to a property entrance on Liznelli Court. And you can also see the history of the site through some of the new street names in that area. So it's a really significant history in Oakville and something we want to retain. And we're happy to have one of the ancestors of the estate, or descendants of the estate, I should say, from the Baileys, to wanting to look to preserve the house and do some changes to it to make sure it can be used long-term as a family home. Well, next slide, please. So the property is listed on the Oakville Heritage Register. It has been since about 2009. And again, it's only listed for the 1926 farm manager's house. There's also a detached garage on the property, which is not considered to be of heritage value. The arts and crafts style cottage was designed by Page Warrington. So this is a building that we actually have architects that we know constructed it. So a lot of heritage value and significance for this structure. And the proposal by the owners is to relocate the historic site or historic house slightly on the site by turning it about 90 degrees so that the front door, which currently faces towards the west, would face towards the north. And the reason the door faces inwardly is because around where the existing driveway is where the road was, the driveway was entering into the estate. And of course, the rest of the estate is no longer there, that road is gone. And to be able to add an addition to the property without putting it in front of the house or changing the roof line or obliterating a lot of the heritage value that you have today, they're proposing to actually relocate it within the site and move it forward so that new additions can be constructed to the side and the rear. As part of this, they would require a heritage easement agreement. Staff is requiring this. So this is an agreement between the town and the owners outlining all of the work that they can do on the property. And this would also require securities, financial securities they'd have to give the town that we would release back once the work has been completed appropriately. And part of this is because there is no planning application that's involved in this at this point. So it's really, we're dealing with it from a heritage perspective. And another requirement we would ask for as part of the heritage easement agreement would be the heritage designation of the property once the work is done. And I know the applicants are in support of this as well. Next slide, please. So the heritage attributes which have so far been identified, which would be detailed more in the future designation bylaw, include the tapered stone corner piers, which are very reflective of the arts and crafts style, using the Credit Valley stone, so a locally quarried stone, and as well the stones used for 2 stone chimneys, which really give it that arts and crafts character. There's also wood shingle cladding, wood windows, the slope of the roof and the wide overhang of these roofs. The overall one-story cottage form of the building is important, which is why we didn't want to see a second story added to the building. And of course, its proximity to Lakeshore Road. You can see on the bottom there where it stood amongst the rest of the estate. The rest of the buildings are the farm buildings associated with the estate. And of course, with these all being gone, the context has changed, but we still want to make sure that the building is kept in its general location so that the relationship to Lakeshore Road remains. Next slide, please. And just another view, this was in your package as well, but it's so interesting to see all of these. You can still see a lot of these tree lines when you look at the aerial views on Google. And so it's interesting to see what was retained when the subdivisions were put in the mid 20th century. Next slide, please. So a view from Lakeshore Road, you can see how the building is facing inward, and you can see the garage at the back, which is to be removed. Next slide. This is looking east towards the house, and you can see Lakeshore Road on the left-hand side. Next. Looking towards the house and the garage. Next. This is a closer up view of the front of the house. They're not really proposing any changes to this elevation other than to put a small porch on. Currently, there's just a small stoop. So this is one change that would be proposed for this elevation. Otherwise, the stone, the wood shingles, the wood windows, everything would be retained. Next. This is looking at what's currently the south view. So this is including the this enclosed sun porch, which was there at an earlier date, but has been altered over the years and changed. There are some different windows and portions that were enclosed at different times. On this elevation, and we'll show you in the elevation drawings, but they're proposing to reconstruct this sun porch, to not relocate it when the building is actually being picked up and relocated. This portion would actually come off, and they would have to be reconstructing it as part of the new addition. And where you see this chimney on the right-hand side, they're proposing to install construct a porch. Next slide, please. This is what's currently the rear or easterly elevation. They are proposing to keep this. This will be open, but they are proposing to enlarge some of the windows. Not all of these windows are original. Some of them have been replaced over time. Next slide, please. And then this is looking at what the elevation that faces Lakeshore currently. And this is where they are proposing on the left-hand side to construct a new addition, a bedroom addition in the future. Next, please. Just showing some of the details, the stone and the wood shingles proposed to be retained. Next. So this is in your heritage impact assessment. It gives a really good idea of showing how the building is to be moved. So the yellow dotted lines on the bottom portion is the existing condition. So again, the house is slightly angled, and the idea would be to turn it straight towards Lakeshore Road. And the slashed yellow and white dashed areas are the sun porch, which is to be reconstructed. You can also see the additions to the new garage addition to the west and the new bedroom addition to the east. The green area circle is showing one tree that would have to be removed in order to accommodate the new addition. So as you can see with this, it allows the additions to be to the side and the rear, and it also allows the owners to have a backyard, whereas currently the house is really pushed up against closer to the back corner and with a very large front yard. So this allows them to have a more of a private rear yard. Next slide, please. This is just showing the existing house. Some changes are proposed to the interior. We are not proposing to recommend to designate the interior, just the exterior. So we currently have no concerns with the interior, but of course, wherever possible, materials should be salvaged and made available if they're not going to be reused. Next slide, please. Hard to see all these details, but this is the first floor showing, or a floor plan showing the house as it is. So you can see to the left-hand side is the new bedroom addition. To the right-hand side is the reconstructed sunroom with the new covered porch. And then farther to the right is a breezeway with the new garage. So the garage is attached, but because the breezeway has a nice separation from the existing house, it's all set back from the front elevation of the house. And one of the things the architects did as well was to make sure that the stone piers, wherever possible, were retained, so that the new additions were set back and stepped in from the stone piers, so that those were still visible. Next slide. This is a second story elevation, or a floor plan rather, and there is no second story being added onto the existing cottage. It's just that there is an attic space that's currently not used that they would like to take advantage of. And the way they would like to do that is to add some skylights and to add a dormer to allow for a little bit more headroom and some light up there. They're also proposing a loft area above the garage, which again is the same height and roof type and slope as the existing house. Next slide. So you can see here some of the roof plans showing the existing house and the areas where new roofs have been added, or dormers, and the new additions as well. Next slide. So here's the elevation view from the front. This is what would be facing Lakeshore Road. You can see the original house in the middle. And again, on the left-hand side, the new bedroom addition, which is farther back, and the garage addition and breezeway to the right. All of the new additions are proposed to have the same roof slope and height as the existing house, and they're all to have wood siding, with the idea being that this is distinguishable from the wood shingles on the existing cottage, but still something that's complementary to the existing heritage building. And the new windows are all to be multi-paned windows to continue the character of the heritage building, but of course they will still be somewhat different so that we can see the original heritage building differentiated from the new portions. Next slide, please. This is looking from the rear of the property, so looking at the back of the garage on the left-hand side. And on the right-hand side in the center is where you can see the original cottage. Again, some changes, some enlarging, enlarged windows on that back elevation. And then on the right hand, you can see the bedroom addition. Next slide. This is looking from what will be the west side, looking on the right-hand side, on the west side of the garage, and the left-hand side as if the garage isn't there, so you can see internally to the house. A little bit difficult to see in the screen, but maybe you can see it a little bit better in your agenda package. Next slide. And this is the last elevation view from what's currently from the street. So would be from the new east elevation with the bedroom on the left-hand side and the new porch on the right-hand side. Next slide. So with this whole application, we have been working with the owners and the architect to make sure that the significant historic features are to be retained and restored. And of course, a heritage consultant was hired by the owners as part of this application, and all of the work has been assessed by the heritage consultant as well. And we've been working together to make sure that the proposal retains the heritage features as much as possible. The new additions are located to the side and rear of the house. The additions complement the historic house, but again, materials have been differentiated enough so that the new portions are distinguishable from the old portion. And any changes that are being made to the existing house are considered to be fairly modest changes that respect the arts and crafts character of the existing cottage. Next slide. So this is the staff recommendation. There are some changes you can see that are a little bit different than what you have in your report. The first one, I just want to note where it's orange in the first one, we've just added that exterior restoration, just to be a little bit more clear, that the heritage easement agreement will cover all of the alterations, including the rehabilitation of the building, the exterior restoration, and the relocation of it. And of course, this is to be in keeping with the content of this report. So that agreement will be done between the town and the owner to outline all of the work that's to be done on the property. The second recommendation is that the heritage easement agreement be executed in accordance with Executions Bylaw 2013-057. This is just to make sure we're doing this properly. The third one was regarding a notice of intention to designate. We've actually removed this. It will be as part of the heritage easement agreement, but considering that there are new changes to the Ontario Heritage Act with certain time limits that we must act on in terms of when a property when a notice of intention to designate is issued, you must follow through with the designation within a certain time frame, and we don't want to have to limit ourselves to this. So we're actually removing it from the staff recommendation, but it will be included as part of the heritage easement agreement. So the property will be designated in the future with the owner's support. And the final one is that the town solicitor be authorized to discharge the heritage easement agreement from title. This is important because we want to make sure that when this work is done, it's removed from title so that no one is encumbered by it in the future. And we've just removed the reference to the designation from this piece as well, just so that we're not getting into any issues in terms of the Heritage Act requirements for timing. So those are the changes. I'm happy to answer any questions. I believe we have the architect, the owner, and possibly the heritage consultant here as well to answer questions. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Carolyn. I think that those little tidy ups in the recommendation answered some questions for me too, because I know that you don't want to trigger time limits. So you don't want to say, now we're going to issue a notice to designate when we're simply not ready to do that until the house has been moved. And also the tightening up of all of those external features are really part now of the easement agreement, because I think it's so important. I sense no likelihood that we will lose any of the heritage attributes when this is done. This project seems to have been conceived to retain as much as possible, but you know, the two chimneys and the stone corners, these are important elements, and we want to see them retained. So thank you for that. Any questions of Carolyn? Yes, Jerry.
Mr. Chair, Councillor Duddick had her hand up way before.
Well,
Thank you. It's okay. Go ahead, Jerry.
no. You see, I was looking in the wrong part of the screen, wasn't I? You're up there.
Okay.
Anyway, go ahead, Kathy, and then Jerry.
Thank you. Thank you. I just wanted to twofold say how pleased I am about this. I was so worried when I saw the for sale sign go up. I live around the corner. I've lived here since I was 6. So I've seen the evolution of this property and watched the water tower go down, see the development of the property. They have done an excellent job of preserving this home. And it was well used up until recently by the caretaker, who also performed several of the landscaping duties on the original house, or the one after the fire rather. I just want to commend staff for working with the applicant. It's one of those win-win situations where not only do we have a really good end result, but we also have a descendant of the original owners that are doing that work to preserve it. So very rare from what I've seen. Usually it's flipped to someone for a development. So kudos to everyone in regards to it. It is a very large property, as you had indicated. So moving it makes perfect sense. And for the first time, people will appreciate the front entrance. Right now, it's always been a shame that they sort of see the portico from the side. So just wanted to say well done on all counts, and look forward to moving it at the appropriate time.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. Okay, Jerry, did you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I concur with Councillor Duddick's good news story. That really well done, Carolyn. Nice to see. I have a question. Well, one is just to confirm what Drew mentioned about all the external features being retained, the 2 chimneys, because I see one of the chimneys in the drawings is just outlined. So I just wanted to confirm that the 2 chimneys are being retained and restored. And that the other item is that there's an understanding that there's going to be a basement, a new basement constructed for this, and that when they reposition the house in its new location, that it's not raised too much above the ground level so that it is perceived in much the same way as you see it now. And if anything, if they'd like to raise it, maybe they do it with landscaping rather than just plop it up and and seeing a really heavy foundation base, which I think would destroy some of the lovely architectural features of the arts and crafts. Just those two items to confirm, Carolyn.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Jerry, we have Bill Hicks, the architect here, who can also probably answer these questions. But firstly, on the chimney, we had the heritage impact assessment just speak to both of them being retained, both of them being identified as heritage features, and staff have had the same comments. And I think there are some interior changes to the building that no longer require one of the chimneys, but we have been talking about how to retain the chimney externally, so that you can still see it, even if it's not actually a functional chimney. So those discussions will continue through the heritage easement agreement. And I think we will probably find a solution there, because you're right, the chimneys are really part of the heritage character of the building. And then the second piece, yes, I don't believe the idea is to raise the building. Again, I'll see if Mr. Hicks can provide any additional details to that. But again, you're right, because it's a very sort of low slope cottage close to the ground, we wouldn't want to see it raised too high, because that would change the character of the building. But I'll see after any questions of staff, we'll see if Mr. Hicks can answer that as well.
Yes, I can. So.
Okay, we'll come to you shortly, Bill.
Yeah.
Okay, Jerry, did that answer your question? Yeah. Okay, but Carolyn, just for the benefit of the slowest guy in the room here, not catching on, when I'm looking at the recommendation, there are some new bits being added to the house. We don't have any reference to choice of materials, selection of materials being approved by staff at the final stage, nor do we have a reference here to the thing expiring in 2 years after it's approved by council. So these are two things. The first one could capture the landscaping aspect, right? That in the delegation to staff for any minor changes that might occur.
Well, so the idea is in the first portion of the recommendation, you also have it saying, as outlined in this report, I'm just trying to pull it up here so I get the exact wording, in keeping with the content of this report. So that would include the heritage impact assessment. So the idea being that what you see in the heritage impact assessment and what you see in the staff report is what's going to be incorporated into the heritage easement agreement, which will outline all those details. So if there is something specific, I mean, you could add it in here, but that wording in keeping with the content of this report is really what we use to flush out the heritage easement agreement to get all those details done. And you're kind of relying on staff and this report and the heritage impact assessment done by the heritage consultant to make sure that the final details through the heritage easement agreement reflect the work that we've talked about today. But if there is something specific, you could add it in. We don't, however, have the deadline attached to it, because it's not a heritage permit going to council. It's really an agreement between the town and the owner. And we're telling you today what's going to be in the agreement, and you're hopefully supporting us through that by supporting the staff recommendations.
Good, that's fine. I'm happy with that. Okay, any more questions of Carolyn? Okay, nice to see you. Good morning, Mr. Hicks. Bill,
Good morning,
would you like to add anything to what Carolyn has said? This looks like a lovely project, and I'm sure you're enjoying working on it.
Yeah, I'll just add a couple of notes, and then I'll answer the two questions that are before us. So, and it has been a great project to work on. I was actually approached by many different potential buyers of the property, so I'm pleased that it's ended up with a descendant of the original family. I knew the property well. Obviously, I did most of the houses throughout the Bailey estate many, many years ago. But so this is nice to see the final piece finally put together on this site. And I think it was our suggestion, and I thank Carolyn for the work she's done in working together with our team. But I think our first suggestion was to pick it up and move it forward and turn it, which I think gives better view lines of the entrance, as we've already discussed. It is, I just wanted to note for the committee's understanding is that we will have to ask for a front yard setback variance because it's more than 1 meter in front of the existing house. So that variance application will be made. And I'll answer the question with respect to the grading. We have to go through grading a DESP approval on it. We're looking at that right now. Our intent is that if, I think someone had, Jerry had suggested that perhaps through the grading on the site, it's very important to us to maintain that relationship between the main floor and the grades immediately around the house. But to get appropriate drainage onto our site, we may have to lift it slightly, but we're going through that analysis right now. But I can assure the committee that there won't be a large foundation with 5 steps leading up to the house. It will stay sort of as it is right now. Which I think is about 18 inches or less above the grade. So I think we've tried to do something in terms of the additions that respects the existing house, keeping the stone columns. The one question with respect to the chimney, it does show that one chimney is being removed. I know that the 2 chimneys are important. The structural gymnastics that we have to go through to retain the second chimney at the front, we're still studying, but we can't keep the chimney right through the house because it totally obliterates the utilization of the main floor of the house. It's right exactly where you don't want it. So our intent is to try and preserve the look of that chimney from the outside, but the only way we can really do it is to actually take some of that stone and face cut it so that we don't have to put structural steel throughout the entire structure. So I guarantee you that one chimney is staying, and we're going to do our best to preserve the second chimney, but that's our objective. But I need the committee to know that if it's just impossible to do, then we're going to be looking at creating what looks like the chimney, but it's not going to be the original chimney. So it's just too difficult. We have to pick up the entire house. We're trying not to pick up that chimney at the same time. And in terms of the foundation, there is a new basement being built underneath the entire place. We will preserve any pieces of stone that we pull out of the foundation. It's because it's made up of a number of different materials, and we'll use those for restoration work as required. But we think we can pick up, the house mover's already been on site. We think we can pick up the house and preserve all the columns exactly as they are. So I think it's a good outcome for it. We're excited by it. I think it'll be a beautiful project when it's finished, but I did want to note the chimney concern because my client specifically has that concern. And the only other concern she's expressed, and this is something we can deal with Carolyn on and perhaps with council, is how they deal with the letters of credit. You'll know this is there's always a budget attached to these, so I have to work with my clients, but I think originally they had suggested that a letter of credit for the entire value of lifting the house, moving the house, doing all the additions, et cetera, may have to be posted. And that creates a financial hardship that's almost impossible to meet by my client, because it basically means even though it's a letter of credit, you're paying for the work twice. So we're going to have some of those discussions, I guess, with council or with Carolyn to see what elements we can post those LCs for that are going to make it a reasonable and affordable approach. But no concern with the intent of posting it. We just want to have some discussions on how many of those elements we have to post that LC for. So, because it is a financial burden that's difficult for my clients to carry. So I think otherwise that's it. I think we think it's a great project. I'm sure the Committee of Adjustment is going to support it. I don't think there'll be any concerns with that. And certainly the neighbors, I'm sure, will be happy to see something happen with the property. So open to any questions that you have, though. So
Thank you, Bill. I will just say that chimney is important. I think you're hearing that, and it's certainly the input from the committee that we want to see what we see is what we get. And I understand the difficulties, but if it could simply be a frame with the stone, the original stone, appropriately dressed so as to reduce the weight. I mean, it's not going to be a functioning chimney, but I think the appearance, and I think Carolyn's got that very firmly in view as the thing progresses and so on. The posting of letters of credit, that is something that is not for this committee to deal with. Right. But I hear what you say, and I'm sure a solution will be found to that. Are there any questions of Mr. Hicks at this point? I'm looking at everybody. I must put my glasses on, then I can be sure that I will see everybody. There are no yellow hands showing up, and there are nothing. Okay, so no further questions. Does anyone else wish to speak to this application? Have we any other delegates? I know we have some listed, but not everybody needs to speak, only those that want to speak. But if anybody else wishes to speak? Nope. Okay, right, thank you. Okay, Bill, you can mute yourself, and but stay around.
It's hard to do, so.
Well, yes, if you don't do it, Jill will, so. Okay, so we're confined to the board now. Is there any further discussion? Is there any discussion on this? How do we feel about this recommendation? I will ask Carolyn to put the revised recommendation back up on the screen before we call the question, so we can be sure what we're voting on. Any other discussion on this? We heard from Kathy. Do you want to speak again, Kathy?
No, just other than the fact I'd be pleased to move it. I'm pleased you raised the point about the designation, because when I saw it being removed, it gave me concern that that wasn't going to be retained, and it is important. So the explanation Carolyn provided regarding where it takes place in the process is important. But I do think we're going to find a good place to land in terms of that second chimney. And as you pointed out, even if it is faced for the appearance of it, certainly that will be able to retain the appearance for us, because as you pointed out, it is important. So thank you so much to staff for all their hard work with the applicant throughout the process. It's resulted in a good solution and a win-win.
Thank you, Kathy. Yeah, when the notice to designate sort of disappeared, I was asking about that beforehand. You can have too many ticking clocks lying around, and one of them might have a bomb attached to it. So you just don't want to set off too many. So Carolyn, can you put up the
Yes, I'll have to
revised-
ask the clerks or our IT
No.
staff to bring it back up. Just the last page of the staff recommendation in the PowerPoint. There you are.
That's
So
it. Thank you
then
very much.
we're
Okay,
just
so that
adding-
is
yeah.
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Mr. Chair.
Sorry. No, that is now the motion that that Kathy has moved. Is there any further discussion on that motion? And you're now all on a little box at the side, but no, I can't see anybody waving their hands. Okay, so I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed to the recommendation? Seeing none, the motion is carried. Thank you very much, everybody, for your help and participation. And we'll move on to the next item, which is 4.3, which is the conservation plan for Knox 16 Church and Cemetery. And this one is Sue. So Sue, off you go.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. We'll just get the presentation pulled up and I'll take you through this very good news story. Great. So we all just saw Knox 16 just a month or two ago when we were moving forward with the notice of intention to designate for the cultural heritage landscape on this property. Next slide, please. So hopefully you'll all remember the site. It's located on Dundas, right at the intersection of Lions Valley Park Road, and it includes the historic church, which its current form dates from 1899, and the historic cemetery right next to it as well. Next slide, please. So we've taken this property through our typical cultural heritage landscape process, meaning that we did the phase 2 research and assessment report back in October of 2020. You'll remember that very thorough report prepared by Elaine. And then we've been working with the congregation since then with for the notice of intention to designate, which forms the basis of the designation bylaw, as well as the conservation plan. And so that notice of intention to designate was issued. The objection period will be expiring next week on October 25th. We are currently not expecting any objections, but it's we don't like to jinx ourselves, but we've still moved ahead with the preparation of the conservation plan because we usually prepare that as the same time as finalizing what would go into the bylaw to ensure that everything is working harmoniously with each other. Next slide, please. So the conservation plan, again, it follows the format that we've seen and used for our other cultural heritage landscape properties. But what I would note is that Elaine, who prepared this plan, has gone to I think some pretty great links to improve the language for usability and clarity, especially because we're working with a property owner who isn't a corporation. The properties we've been dealing with lately have been, a lot of them have been owned by the town, and they're used to dealing with kind of more official town languages. And so we received some great feedback from the congregation of Knox 16 about how to make the plan a little bit more understandable and usable from their perspective. And we were very happy to work on that. Next slide, please. So we did hold several meetings with members of Knox 16, the wardens, rector. The offer is always open to anybody who wants to chat with us. Actually, I think we did hold an in-person meeting last summer outside in the parking lot. But we've had since then several Zoom meetings as well to ensure that all questions are being answered so that the congregation has a comfort level of what we're bringing forward. And we do as well. So we feel that we've got a very good plan that we're bringing forward today, and that the collaborative way of putting this plan together has greatly improved this conservation plan for both us and for Knox 16. It's been an absolute pleasure working with them. As always, they're such a wonderful group of people who have, put so much effort into maintaining this historic property and want to make sure that it's maintained for future generations as well. And we're hopeful that the conservation plan will help them achieve those goals. Next slide, please. And so we're here to see if Heritage Oakville has any additional feedback to give us on the draft conservation plan. If you've got anything to include, we'll look at that straight away, because we'd like to bring the final draft forward to Planning and Development Council on November the 1st. But if you are satisfied with it, or there are just a couple minor tweaks, we would recommend that you endorse and recommend the conservation plan to P&D for approval. Next slide, please. So the recommendation before you today is that the draft Cultural Heritage Landscape Conservation Plan for the Cultural Heritage Landscape of Knox Presbyterian Church 16 and Cemetery at 1150 Dundas Street West be endorsed. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Sue. I know we have helped this congregation with heritage grants in the past, but the grants don't cover anything like the whole cost of the work that's been done. But it's so nice to see these photographs of the inside again, because you can see the quality of the work that has been done there, and the effective use that they've made of the money that they've been given to assist them in that, not to pay for it, but to assist them. Okay, so the first request from Sue was comments and feedback. So if you want to give her any, now's the time. Kathy?
Thank you. The comment being well done, Sue, and our heritage staff for working so well with this particular church, as well as others, but this one in particular. It has built a very positive, constructive relationship between the congregation, the town, and heritage. And I'm glad you raised the heritage grants, Drew, because I do think that plays a bearing on the fact that a congregation feels supported in the initiative when they're dedicated to pursuing something such as this. So I just wanted to say thank you for all your effort in this regard, and win-win.
Thank you, Kathy. Anyone else want to comment? I think we're all delighted to see this. Jerry?
Yes, a wonderful, great news story. Thank you, Susan. I was just going to add that as Susan has mentioned, the church congregation is very small, and raising the financial funding to preserve this building is onerous on the small group and small congregation. And I wondered if the town is looking for opportunities to, I guess, use the facility, or if there's a reciprocal arrangement to use the facilities for the greater landscape and activities in Parks and Rec, for example, or for other rentable money-making propositions for this congregation, that they can extend their space to community events or town events if that has been considered. I know it's not part of the heritage, but it would be a good plan for the adaptive continuing reuse of this historic facility and site.
Mr. Chair, I can actually speak to that at least a little bit. Right now, I believe that the church actually has an agreement with the region of Halton in order to share their parking lot space while ongoing road construction is happening in the area. And I think that's, a very beneficial partnership for the parking lot facilities that aren't necessarily being used by the church during the week. I have definitely put the wardens in touch with Chris Mark, the Director of Parks and Open Spaces, to have conversations on many different levels about, I think town park staff has occasionally helped out with maintenance in the cemetery, which will be, an ongoing challenge, I think, for the church. And the only other thing I could say is that we're always willing to have that conversation, and I'm more than happy to help point them in the right direction or give them another person to talk to, even if I'm not the one who has any say in the decision making on that. But it is a fantastic congregation and group of people, and I'm always so happy to help. So.
Good, and it's fair to say there is nothing in this plan that prevents the congregation from exploiting the location that they have for these kinds of events. And is there access to any trail from adjacent to the church there?
So the church is located right at the top of Lions Valley Park Road.
Yeah.
So the road down, going down is probably not that bad. Coming up might be a little bit challenging, but I know, during the off season when that road is closed off, I'm sure there is parking happening up there, off road. I don't know if they use the church lot or not, but that's something else that could certainly be explored as well.
Yeah, I'm sure they can look at that. Okay, good. Any other comments and discussion? George, would you like to give me a motion to endorse this? Good. Thank you, George. Okay, George has made the motion that we endorse this, and this will go to council at its next meeting on the 1st of November. Okay, so is there anyone opposed to the motion? Seeing none, the motion is carried. Thank you very much indeed, Sue, for all your work on this, and to the church congregation and its leadership who've worked really hard to make this happen and to preserve this for the whole community. It's an advantage to us all. Okay, the next item on the agenda is 4.4, which is a zoning bylaw amendment review, and it's the 150 Randall, 125 and 143 Church Street block, which is outside the Heritage District, but of course is essentially attached to the Heritage District. So we get the opportunity to provide some comment and review. And I think this is you, Sue, again. Okay, well, off you go.
Yes, Mr. Chair. So if the presentation could be pulled up, I'll just, the recommendation here, not spoiler alert, is simply to receive the information that has been shared with you in the agenda package. And I also have some additional photos in the presentation today. So we're not asking the committee to, make any decisions on approving or recommending denial to Planning and Development Council on this one. It's an exercise to collect your feedback that will then be used in the planning report that will go forward to P&D that considers all of the issues and concerns with this proposed development. And so I believe the planner on the file, Tricia Collingwood, I think she's here with us today to help answer any questions that I might not be able to assist with. And I'm just going to give you a very high level description of what the project is and where it's located, and show you a ton of photos. And then it will be a matter of myself and the Madam Secretary recording your comments so that they can be considered by planning staff. Next slide, please. So the application is a zoning bylaw amendment to develop a 12-story mixed-use building with underground parking. And this is located at the corner of Randall Street and Navy Street. It's part of the downtown growth area. And the site is generally planned to accommodate some high density intensification. However, it is directly adjacent to the downtown Oakville Heritage Conservation District along the Randall Street frontage of this development. And there are several individually Part 4 designated properties and listed properties in the immediate area as well. And so when the application was submitted, we did request a heritage impact assessment, not to describe the heritage value of the site itself, which it does not have any, but to look at the impact of the proposed development on the heritage attributes of the adjacent heritage properties. Next slide, please. And so this is actually an image taken from the Heritage Impact Assessment. You'll notice that in your agenda package, obviously you have a number of drawings and images of the proposed development, but I've also included the Heritage Impact Assessment, which was completed at the time of an earlier iteration of the design for the building. And then yesterday, the town updated the agenda page to include a cover letter from the heritage consultants to confirm that they have also reviewed this new design as well, which is quite similar, but does have some differences to ensure that their recommendations have generally have stayed the same, or if they have changed, why. And so this map shows the development site bounded in that red and black dashed line. But you can also see on this map, the boundary of the Heritage Conservation District is the kind of blue-gray shaded areas. And so that you can see it runs up to the 16 Mile Creek, and it includes the properties that front onto Thomas Street, as well as 156 Randall, which now actually is pretty much located where the number 140 is on this map, due to that development application proceeding. So the blue squares are properties that have an individual Part 4 designation as well as a Heritage District designation. The properties there in yellow are indicating properties that are part of the downtown Oakville Heritage Conservation District, but have been identified as non-heritage or non-contributing properties. And then you can see one kind of lone green, lightly shaded green property, and that is the listed property at 136 Church Street. Next slide, please. And so I've included some context pictures here that weren't in your agenda package, and this is really just to set the stage for looking at what the current situation is. So these are actually all Google Earth photos that date from February of 2021. So they're relatively current, but I think they show some of the changing circumstances in and around this area. But here we have the development site itself. And so this is looking straight on the corner of Randall and Navy Street. This is the building that will be demolished as part of this development. There are no concerns there by heritage staff, as it is obviously a modern kind of strip mall plaza, and is not part of the heritage district, not listed, and doesn't have any heritage resources. But you can see in this photo, looking down Randall Street, towards the new 4-story condominium development that includes 156 Randall, which is the Paris property that some of you may remember from a few years ago. Next slide, please. Okay, and so this is coming around the corner. So now we are standing kind of in the Heritage Conservation District. So we are looking at that little white house, which its address is still technically 156 Randall Street, but it's now fronting onto Thomas Street, and the 4-story condominium is being constructed behind it. But then you can also see down Thomas Street to 134 and 130, I believe, Thomas Street, which will be impacted with the proposed new building. So essentially the new building will be visible from behind these structures. Next slide, please. This is another view from Thomas Street. So you can see again the area that would have these buildings are not proposed to be changed or directly impacted in any way, but there will be a new building in behind them. Next slide, please. And then this is just a little bit further down Randall Street. So in the corner there, you can see the radial railway station and its new addition. And then, you know, in the mid-ground, you've got 156 Randall Street and the new 4-story development. And in that area behind that would be the proposed development that we're looking at today. Next slide, please. And so here we come to these slides with various images of the proposed new development. So this is definitely a contemporary design that's being used to differentiate the building within the streetscape, and also to kind of create a little bit of a gateway entrance feature at the corner here of Randall and Navy Street. Next slide, please. So this is coming around. This is the kind of aerial view from, I believe, from Randall Street. So we're looking down at the step downs from the tallest part of the new building, which is 12 stories, and it has this kind of various kind of graduations of step downs to a 6-story podium base that then transitions to the 4-story condominium development at 156 Randall Street. Next slide, please. This is twisting around. So we've got an overhead view here that would almost be, you know, from right above Thomas Street. So it's looking down, you can see the, at the corner there, you can see the 156 Randall small building with the 4-story condominium behind it, and then the proposed treatments on what would otherwise be more of a blank facade of the building. And you can see the treatments proposed there are designed to provide some visual interest behind the buildings that are located in the Heritage Conservation District. Next slide, please. Okay, so here again, we're looking at, this is a slightly more of a ground level view on the Randall Street elevation, so that you can clearly see the tallest part of the buildings located towards the Randall and Navy Street intersection, and then the stepping down of the graduated levels to the 6-story podium base. Next slide, please. And again, this is the view. This is kind of looking from looking at the Thomas Street elevation, so that you can see the buildings that would be located in front of the development, and then how the development projects over top. Next slide, please. I've just included this the site plan in the in the presentation. There are certainly in your agenda package, you can probably see a much clearer version of this, but it does show kind of just the general building footprint within the site, as well as those of the neighboring properties. Next slide, please. So the heritage impact assessment, I found that section 5.2 of that document was the most helpful to me in its evaluation of the impact of the proposed development. And they've divided into different sections so that they look at each one quite closely. And so they go through the impact on the nearby Part 4 designated properties. That would be 156 Randall, 134 Thomas, and 159 Church Street, as well as the listed property at 136 Church Street. And then it separately looks at the downtown Oakville Heritage Conservation District, including, again, those historic properties, which are also the ones that have the Part 4 designations, 156 Randall, 134 Thomas, and 159 Church, as well as the 2 non-historic properties that are still part of the Heritage District at 140 Thomas Street and 130 Thomas Street. And so the heritage impact assessment looks at the mitigation strategies that have been employed. It notes that there are no direct impacts to any of the heritage attributes identified in the downtown Oakville Heritage District Plan or any of the Part 4 designation bylaws, as those properties are not, they're not included as part of this development, and they won't be touched. However, it certainly notes that there are impacts from this adjacent development, and looking at ways to try to mitigate those was the biggest one was the step down in height from the 12-story tallest point at that corner down to the 6 stories that are adjacent to the 4-story building that's now at 156 Randall Street. It references that the Downtown Oakville Heritage Conservation District Plan recognizes that contemporary design is suitable for modern and infill developments, so as to not try to mimic a sense of heritage, of fake heritage. The uses of the building, which are commercial on the ground level, then that's got office on the second level with residential above, is generally in keeping with most of the commercial properties located within the Downtown Heritage Conservation District itself, although that certainly is, controlled by zoning. And also the site uses underground parking in order to avoid the creation of large empty lots that would create gaps and holes in the downtown streetscape. Next slide, please. And then I just want to highlight the Heritage Impact cover letter. I'm sure you've all read it. I'm not going to read this out, but they have certainly taken a look at the updated elevations that are the ones that are included in your package to show that they consider the changes to the design to be positive and to lessen the impact on the adjacent heritage properties. Next slide, please. And I just included these. These are a couple of the images that were included in that cover letter to the Heritage Impact Assessment that was recently just uploaded to the town's agenda. And it's really, it's a massing exercise to show more clearly without some of the, the building details, where the height is and where the step backs are and how they transition down to the surrounding properties in the Heritage Conservation District. Next slide, please. So that was looking at the Randall Street elevation, what we saw in the previous slide. This is actually looking from the corner, I believe, of Church Street in Thomas, looking down. Next slide. And then again, this is the Church Street elevation. So there's a slight bit of a buffer here. That very low 1-story structure there that's not part of the development site is also not actually part of the Heritage District either. The Heritage District boundary kind of follows more closely the backyards onto or the back lots of Randall Street. And so that property which fronts onto Church Street, it's not a listed heritage building and it's not part of the Heritage District either. Next slide, please. And so I just wanted to close, I think this is probably one of the last slides, with a very kind of clear view of what we're looking at in terms of the Heritage Conservation District and the 40-meter buffer zone that council approved for us to request heritage impact assessments when looking at adjacent impacts from outside development onto the Heritage District. And so the development property that we've been looking at here is kind of in that orangey rectangular shape, and you can see how it directly abuts the Heritage Conservation District, and it's definitely within the blue area buffer zone as well. Next slide, please. And so the staff recommendation, as I said, is simply to receive the information. And what we're really here today is to listen to the discussion and the feedback of Heritage Oakville so that we can include it in the planning report. And so I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. And hopefully Trisha's around so that she can assist me if there's things that I can't answer. And if you just have comments instead, we're happy to, like I said, record all of that information. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Susan. That first photograph you showed that was from February 21, and you said that how new this building, this little strip mall was. I can remember when it was built. I mean, I've been in Oakville long enough because there was another strip mall development and there was a restaurant. It was called the Swiss Bear or something, and it made Swiss cooking. You know, you start off with a pint of cream, a pound and a half of butter, and then you decide what you're going to do with it. And it was a great little Swiss restaurant. And but then that got demolished, and what we see now was put up. So it can't be more than, I don't know, 40 years old. I'm just guessing. But anyway, this is an interesting new development, and we did receive the additional heritage impact input. I think everybody got that, indicating the changes and how they were viewed. And it's Megan who did that. And of course, we know Megan. She's got some cred with us. We've worked with her before. So it was nice to see her work.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure if Megan actually did the heritage impact assessment for this one. I think Megan did the heritage impact assessment for the Lakeshore property.
So she did. I'm just looking at my list and I got my thing all crossed over. You're absolutely right. It was somebody else that did this. But anyway, it was still nice to see Megan's work on the other one. Yep. But yeah, thank you for that correction. That's absolutely right. Anyway, any comments or feedback for Susan, or if Tricia wants to add anything to it? Councillor Gittings first, and then Jerry, and then Brenda.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the details from staff in terms of the meeting the zoning, that the official calls it to be stepped back, and that 12 stories is a permitted height. I think it's 4 to 12 it's allowed, and they're coming in at 12. I guess my question for Trish is, this is clearly the final design that will be coming back to planning and development during the next round. This has already been before P&D once. So I take it they've listened to the comments at that meeting, and it will be that it will be coming back. The only other question I have at this point is in terms of, we're looking at effects on the heritage properties adjacent to it. Where does shadowing fall into that in terms of what's available to be done, or any expressed concerns on that?
Thank you, Councillor Giddings. Through you, Mr. Chair, I am actively trying to get this to the December Planning and Development Committee meeting for a recommendation. They have been through several iterations. We've spent months working on them since even before the application came in. And with regards to shadowing, it is a final detail that we are still looking at. There's probably about one more meeting that needs to happen just to finalize a few details with regards to shadowing towards Thomas Street with the urban design team. But we're pretty confident that there won't be any issues bringing the bylaw forward in December. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Jerry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to, Councillor Giddings mentioned that 4 to 12 stories is allowed on this property. Can you clarify that? And I just wanted to know, what is it that what is being required for a zoning bylaw amendment? Is it the height or the density?
Through you, Mr. Chair. 4 to 12 stories is permitted. It was the downtown Oakville study that it was a lengthy study a few years back that went through council. I think it was December of 2017, and an OPA was brought forward to look at the downtown. In that was the recommendation for policy work to permit upwards of 12 stories on this site. So that was approved by council, and the applicant is responding to that by bringing in a rezoning application that would then implement those policies. So they are required to rezone the property to in accordance with the OPA, and they are doing so. They're looking at 12 stories, and they're looking to respect where urban design and planning and heritage have all come forward to talk about the step backs from the lot lines.
Thank you. Thank you. My comment is that it's nice to see the mitigation strategies on this development, the stepping down, the neutral palette, the commercial on the first and second floors, the underground parking. I would like to comment further on the neutral palette, saying that, you know, in terms of the building, if they can keep it as a backdrop to the iconic heritage downtown, neutral and not stylistically, architecturally iconic on its own, nor fashion forward trendy, but rather, you know, a bespoke approach tailored to the context of our heritage, which is the iconic jewel in our treasure chest. So I would say that the simple horizontal with glazing and neutral color palette is the way to go. There's a similar stylistic aesthetic that is very successful on the corner of Trafalgar and Highway 5 in the high contrast color of black and white that works well there. But I think in downtown Oakville, we almost don't need a style. We need it to be a background to the heritage. And the other comment I have to make is that for the first and second ground floor planes, in order to attract and make it pedestrian friendly, if there are architectural features of streetscaping that can be incorporated into the building to make it a friendly place to walk by, rather than the sheer wall hitting the ground plane, you know, and there are many architectural features and ways of doing that to make it a friendly experience to walk around the building rather than isolating. And that's all I have to say. I mean, this is the place to put density and height. If there was a place to put it, this would be it in the downtown area. You know, the only other thing would be in a progressive planning process, if the ground plane could have been part of the public sphere, the first two planes, because this building and this site captures two amenities of Oakville. The lake, for the upper views, will have a view of the lake and also a view of the 16 Mile Creek. So it's a really nice area and a nice spot to develop, and it would have been nice to keep the ground plane public if possible. But anyway, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Tricia.
Thank you, Jerry. Yeah, I guess the bylaw amendment is simply to bring the zoning in line with the OPA. So it's not as if they're trying to change something to get something that isn't available. Yeah, okay, that's good. Okay, Brenda?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have one comment and one question. First, I would like to say that as an observation, I heard what Jerry just said and how she eloquently described the massing and the other impact of the building. I think I would use the word looming. I do find that the building, particularly on the south side, I guess that's Church, really overhangs, and I'm not comfortable with the design as it is, even though I understand it's gone through planning. So then my follow-up question is to you, Mr. Chair. So what is the impact of not accepting the report as submitted?
I think we're just going to receive it, and I think.
Well, they're the same. Accept and receive are the same, is my understanding.
Yeah, but the comments are the things that are being noted. I don't think it would be conceivable that the committee would vote, but maybe Susan could clarify that for me.
I would just want to say that we certainly do not take the receipt of information as the same as an endorsement or acceptance or approval. This is simply to say that this information has been here and we have seen it. That is it. You're not endorsing it in any way. It's the comments that we're collecting today that will be used to provide input into the final planning and development report.
Okay, thank you very much for the clarification.
Yeah, thank you. So, I mean, we're asked to comment. This is not a heritage application. We can't say yes or no. We're asked to comment on it, so we can't stop it. So we receive the information and our comments are passed on. Okay, George?
There we go, finally. I'm always having trouble getting off the mute. As I understand it, Mr. Chairman, thank you. And perhaps this is directed to Susan, but the addendum that we received a few days ago indicates what I took from it. Maybe I've misunderstood it, but is that the changes are along Navy and Church Street are really, instead of the block effect to the ground, it's opening up with glazing and windows, which maybe make it, I think, make quite a difference from a streetscape perspective, because most people don't walk along looking up at 12 stories. They look along and really are taking in the first and second stories. So it seems to me the main purpose of that addendum, perhaps Susan can clarify or not, is they put the glazing in there to change the really perspective of it.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I mean, the purpose of the addendum in general is to make sure that the heritage impact assessment completed for this thing is valid. Because the heritage impact assessment, if you read, and I understand there was a lot of reading material for this committee meeting, but it was directly responding to an earlier iteration of the design. And so the addendum is to make sure that the qualified heritage consultants have actually seen the new plans, that they're okay with them. But I think you're right, George. One of the things that they are certainly picking up on is that in their opinion, the increased glazing helps to improve the appearance of the building within the streetscape and to mitigate some of that impact on the adjacent heritage district. And it's certainly up to the committee to agree or to not agree, but that was their professional opinion. So.
Thank you. I just wanted the clarification for my own purposes. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Are there any other comments or feedback? Yes, Kerry.
I was just going to say, in support of Brenda's comments, we just spent a ton of money on Lakeshore to open up that streetscape. And now we've got an application that in essence is closing it down. I agree 100%. The glazing makes huge improvements over what was originally proposed. I don't know, they don't give you a photo or a rendering on how close to the sidewalk, because I know there's been a lot of buildings that come up basically right to the sidewalk. I don't have a sense of that from any of the drawings or renderings that have been submitted, but I would hope that it's not right to the sidewalk line, because again, to me, even though if it's in glazing, then I would agree with Brenda. It is blooming, almost hanging over the street because of the second story coming out over. So it's kind of opposite of what we've done on Lakeshore. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Kerry. Trisha's got all of that. Yep.
Yeah,
Sue?
maybe Trisha can respond to that one a little bit.
That's where I was going. And then it'll be Jerry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have been working with the applicant from the first iterations that were coming in, and prior to the application, we were looking at how to push the building back off of Navy, especially to improve that pedestrian experience, as we did also feel that the building was encroaching and I think you used the word looming, which I think is something that was felt amongst staff. So we are looking at a 4 to potentially 5 meter pushback from the property line to allow that to open up from the first or second story. In order to do that, there was some give and take above that to allow for additional GFA to make sure residential units are functional from the inside. If you start to push back too much, then you end up with units that aren't functionally going to provide the space for the type of bedroom sizes and stuff that they want to use. So there was a bit of a balance going on here.
Jerry, did you have another comment?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I see what Brenda and Carrie were mentioning, and it's on page 295 of our package. There's a photograph there, and then on the following page, 296, it shows the perspective. And I think that they've started to address this issue, but bringing glazing down to meet the ground plane is not the solution. I think they have to do more. And I think this committee is, Tricia, I think the committee is saying that that is what's been done is not enough. It's still unfriendly when you see a glass plane hitting the ground, even though you can see through it. It's probably friendlier than a block wall, but it's still not friendly enough for the pedestrian. And it just needs to be, there needs to be a little bit more done to this to provide a little bit more street architecture to make the pedestrian feel comfortable and not to have that sense of looming building overhead. So a little bit more needs to be done. And we understand that you're going to push this back a bit more from the sidewalk area. So I think our comments are strong on that one. Hopefully that helps.
Good comment. Any other comments? Councillor Gittings?
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate Carrie and Jerry, your comments on that. And that's one of the reasons that Councillor Duddick and I enjoy these meetings. And so we can take your comments as well as Trish and well as the heritage staff when that does come back to P&D. So rest assured that we hear you.
Good, thank you. Now, if we were going all European, we'd build a whole arcade along there. We'd cover it over the top and we'd put pillars down right against the road and we would have restaurants and all kinds of stuff flourishing in there. But I guess we're not quite ready for that yet. Okay, any other comments? Super. Can I have a motion to receive the report? Russ, thank you. So we've got a motion to receive the report. Any further comments or discussion? Anyone opposed? The report is received. And thank you, Trish, for your help with this item this morning. And you too, of course, Sue. Okay, so that one is gone. We're now into 5.1, which is information items. And I think we'd had notice of this before, that the Award of Merit, the 2021 Award of Merit from the Canadian Association of Heritage Planners was presented to the town, and that was with respect to the Oakville Harbour Cultural Heritage Landscape Strategy Implementation Project. And I think we all got back to Sue as the sort of point person, but all of the other staff who'd been involved in all of that work and the consultants. And I'm delighted that we got somebody to notice how much good work is being done in the town of Oakville. So well done to Sue and all of the rest of the staff who were involved in it. The next information item is the nice one that also shadows the foreclosing of a year when we get the report on the white oak tree assessment. This comes up, and we've got the 2021 monitoring report, which says the old girl is doing as well as can be expected for her age. And it's nice to see the amount of time and effort that's being put into her maintenance. So, and then the 5.3 is the meeting schedule for 2022, which you can put into your calendars. So are there any comments on any of these items that have been, apart from I saw lots of good hand waving on 5.1, anybody want to say anything about 5.2 or 5.3? So these need to be received. If I can have a motion from someone to receive. Thank you, Brenda. So the motion is that we receive these information items. Anyone opposed to that? Seeing none, the items are indeed received. So the date and time of our next virtual meeting will be Tuesday, November the 16th, and it will start at 9:30. So thank you once again, everybody, for the gift of your time today. It was so lovely to see you all. I look forward to us getting together, as I keep saying, and I know the town is making sure there will be no supply chain issues with respect to the sticky buns that will have to be provided for us at that very first meeting. So good. Anyway, thank you very much. And I have a motion to adjourn. I got that from Sue. I got it from Sue. Sue wanted to get her name in the minutes. So Sue has moved that we adjourn. There is no one opposed. The meeting is now adjourned. So thank you, everybody. Bye.